So I recently asked my viewers and listeners, what's the hard part of writing? And I got some great responses, including this one from Terry, who said, the hardest part about writing for me is the lack of feedback. I hate the new policy whereby magazines and newspapers simply ignore queries if they're not interested rather than responding with a polite rejection. It's impossible to know if they actually received or read our pitches, and it's downright rude to be ignored when writers put in time and effort to make a pitch. Of course, outright rejections are hard to take too. But how about an acknowledgement when an effort has been made? So, uh, obviously, you know, I agree with Terry. It would be better if a response is given, but there's nothing we can do about that, is there? There's nothing we can do about how long it takes people to respond to us. And I'm not going to give anyone a lecture about how busy editors and agents are. Terry's a grown up, and she knows all this. She doesn't need to hear it. I think this particular um, question has more to do with rejection, however, which is what I want to talk about today. Um, again, writing is so much about controlling what we can control. And there's a lot we can't, specifically other people. As I have talked about often in this podcast, the one thing you can't really do as a writer, spend any time wondering what people think of your stuff, certainly while you're writing. Rejection, however, would seem to have to do with other people, as they're the one doing the rejection. They're the ones you need to accept your work, to read your work, to give it a good review. And so much of an author's life seems bound up with what other people think of their work. However, I've come to understand from my own experience as a writer that rejection really starts at home. It starts with us. What does that mean? Well, our job is to tell the story we most want to tell in the way we most want to tell it. Meaning, as we're writing along, we are looking to satisfy our own unique aesthetic with every single sentence we put down on the page, every one we leave there. It's our aesthetic that is being met. But what can happen is, as a writer moves into being an author, as the writer becomes more aware that they would like to publish their work and they would like to have their work well received, we can begin to picture what a reader or an editor might think of our work, and we might start altering what we're writing to meet the needs of what we believe to be some reader of some kind. Or just like we do in conversation when we're not writing, but simply being social, all of us probably in a social situation has not said exactly what we meant, has carved off what we actually meant to say to be polite, so we would fit in, so we would be acceptable to the groups, we wouldn't seem weird, we wouldn't be boring. It's a very common social practice. We would like to say just what we mean, but we don't always do it. And then we come to the page, and you really do have to be rude in that you are saying just what it is you meant to say, what you are most interested in, not what you think will be acceptable to others. You really can't give a hoot about others when you're writing. It doesn't matter what's acceptable to them. You are trying to satisfy your aesthetic. And every time we do in our writing what we do in conversation sometime, which is leave something off, think, oh, I can't say that, or what would be more acceptable? What would be more polite? When we reject ourselves by not writing what we actually wanted to write, we feel that pain that we're going to feel eventually from others begins. In other words, we rejected ourselves. And so when we give our work to others, we are giving them something that we ourselves, that is a representation of our own rejection of our own aesthetic. You have to have complete acceptance of what you like. Your job as a writer is to satisfy your aesthetic and to discover what it is, to find out what it is. And I say this because I spent a long time trying to be someone I wasn't as a writer. And I'm trying to be someone I wasn't just as a person, I think. It wasn't big changes, wasn't dramatic, but it doesn't have to be. It can be very small. But every time I carve away, every time I'm not authentic to the word, I feel it. And I start accepting not being myself because it means that myself isn't good enough. And as a writer, who you are exactly has to be good enough. And the only way to validate that is on every sentence. Does this please me? Does this please me? Not will it please anybody else? Not is it good enough? Does it please me? Just me. And you know the difference. And when that's the only question that you answer time and again, now you've accepted yourself. Self-acceptance is not complicated, really. It's natural. But we teach ourselves how to reject ourselves in little ways and little ways and little ways and little ways. Complete self-acceptance. And when you've done that, and when you send out a book where you have been totally honest and you have satisfied that aesthetic, my experience is the response meets that. The rejection we feel in ourselves often gets mirrored from the publishing world or the reading world. So it starts at home. Satisfy yourself, and you will feel that self-acceptance. And it's really a no-lose situation at that point. You send it out knowing, I can't do any better than this right now. That's our job. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Again, what's the hard part? I'd love to hear from you. Tell me, what's the hard part of writing? It's different for everybody. See, that was a new kind of question. I answered it in my own way. What's the hard part? I would like to hear from you. And if you just want to listen, hit subscribe so you don't miss anything. Or if you just like it, say so. I always respond to comments when you leave them. So until next time, this is Bill Kenower. Stay fearless.